Hello and welcome to another new video. I hope you're doing well, and I'm very excited because as you can see, we've got a brand new aquascape in here. This is my first time doing a Brazilian style, and I think it's important for me to learn all these different styles and learn what they have to offer. This particular scape is inspired by Luca Gallaraga's IAPLC 2020 entry. It ranked 7th and has these beautiful valley composition with bold Seiryu stones and a lot of stem plants. Then the first order of business is to add the base layer substrate. I'm reusing the ADO Power Sand and Aquaplant Culture's Scapers base from my previous layout. These are in mesh bags so that they are handy and easy to reuse. Next is adding some starter bacteria from the 2-hour aquarist called APT Start. It is a pack of dormant bacteria that comes to life when it comes into contact with water. Remember that the blue sachet should only be added once you've filled the tank up with water. I have had great results with this, especially when setting up a brand new aquascape. I am also adding some root tabs called APT Jazz. This will help me to ensure that the substrate is rich with nutrients for those stem plants. It also helped me to dose leaner fertilizers in the water column, minimizing algae and unlocking those rich red colors. Now that the substrate system is ready, it is time to cover it all up with a layer of aquasoil. Again, I'm reusing the aquasoil from the previous layout because it is still quite fresh. Now onto the fun part. I started to add the main rocks into the tank from the dojo, where I had already glued some pieces together. I want to have a dominant main rock on the left side of the aquascape and a secondary rock on the right side. I then started to detail the main rock with smaller pieces of stones. After a couple hours of work, I sat down and took a photo of the aquascape. And when I was reviewing it, something just didn't feel right. I wasn't in love with it, I didn't like it. Especially through the photos, looking at the main rock, even though I added some more stones, it just looked a bit flat, it looked very chunky and had no detail. And even though I added more stones at the back, there was no sense of depth. And at this point, I was feeling quite stuck. You know, do I try and fix the hardscape? And if so, how do I go about fixing it? Or do I restart completely, start from scratch? Or do I just move on and do something else? Just give up and do something what I'm used to. Working with rock is one of my biggest weaknesses, and often I like to work with wood instead. Then, after leaving the hardscape for about a week, I decided that I would give it a second attempt. I'd take out all the rocks, and even the rocks that were glued together, I broke them down into their individual pieces. And I was going to start from scratch once again. I observed how Luca used many small pieces of rock to combine them and make the main rock. And I think that's where I went wrong. In my first attempt, I had only used 3 pieces of rock and glued them together. And that's what made it look chunky and bulky with not that much detail. So this time around, I used about 10 pieces of small to medium sized rocks, and I glued them together to combine into the main rock. And the trick to this is having to be able to fit them like puzzle pieces so that they look really natural and that they blend together. After that, I started to work on the right side, with a similar technique combining different pieces of rock together that are from small to medium size. I then used super glue and cotton pad to secure the rocks. I also started to add more aqua soil at the back of the tank to gain more height. This allowed me to add more rocks in the background. As I moved towards the back, I started to use smaller and smaller rocks to force the perception of depth. Everything was starting to look much better. There was depth, there was detail, and there were layers. Except that I felt the mid-ground was still lacking a bit. I felt like the rocks that were there were a little bit too fragmented, so I started to tweak it a bit more. I started to add a bit more detail and create a bit more flow. I want the mid-ground to be a place where your eyes can rest and dwell on all the different details. The last thing to do was to add the sand in the foreground. I like to have the sand really thin at the front of the glass to accentuate the depth of the tank overall. Then I proceeded to add small bits of broken stone along the edges of the main stones to add more detail and really accentuate the grandness of the main stones. Lastly, adding the sand path. I think by adding a layer of sand helps to create contrast and lead your eye to the vanishing point. It helps your eyes to distinguish more easily all the different layers. So after weeks and weeks of work in reviewing it, restarting it, constantly editing it, I'm happy to show you the final outcome. Seeing the evolution of the aquascape was really rewarding. This scape taught me so many things. How to work with rock, learning the traits of each rock, how to create depth, how to create layers, but also, most importantly, the important traits of perseverance. There were so many times that I was so close to giving up. Every time I reviewed the hardscape, I just couldn't work out what was wrong with it. But I'm very happy that I pushed on and that I pushed my boundaries to create something truly beautiful, this Brazilian style aquascape. And that is going to be a wrap for today's video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for your support.